Deep in the heart of equatorial Africa, miners drilling inside an ancient uranium deposit uncovered something that simply should not exist. Buried in nearly 2 billion-year-old rock was evidence of a nuclear reactor, one that had been active on its own eons before humans ever walked the Earth. At the same time, microscopic spheres of rare metals have been found scattered in 65 million-year-old clay, arranged in patterns eerily similar to fallout from modern atomic tests. And deep within Arctic ice cores, scientists have detected radioactive isotopes that can only be created by nuclear reactions in ice layers dating back tens of thousands of years. Discoveries like these are fundamentally rewriting our understanding of Earth's past. We have always believed we were the first beings to build cities, to forge metal, to harness fire and split the atom, the first species to mold the planet to our will. But what if we were wrong? What if advanced civilizations walked this Earth long before our own, rising to great heights only to vanish without a trace? Could geological time have erased nearly all evidence of their existence, leaving behind only cryptic clues to tease our curiosity? If you love mind-bending scientific mysteries that challenge everything we think we know, hit that like button, because what we're about to uncover will change how you see our world forever. Prepare yourselves. We begin. In 1980, geologist Walter Alvarez was examining limestone outcrops in Italy when he found a peculiar band of clay marking the boundary between the Cretaceous and Paleogene periods. This thin layer contained an abnormal concentration of the rare element iridium, about 30 times higher than in surrounding rock. Since iridium is common in meteorites but scarce in Earth's crust, Alvarez realized he was looking at fallout dust from a colossal asteroid impact. That one discovery, a spike of a metal in ancient clay, revolutionized our understanding of history. It proved that a single, cataclysmic event, an asteroid strike 65 million years ago, could leave a clear, indelible signature in the geological record, even after eons. This revelation raised a profound question. If a lone asteroid could imprint a global memory in the rocks after tens of millions of years, then what kind of imprint might an advanced civilization leave? If there had been industrial societies before us, could we find their calling cards in Earth's strata? And crucially, would we even recognize those clues for what they are? A group of scientists formalized these musings into what they playfully named the Silurian Hypothesis, a nod to a science fiction race of ancient beings. It asks, did other technological civilizations exist on Earth long before humans? And have their traces been misidentified or lost to time? It's a staggering idea. Our modern global civilization has been around for only a couple of hundred years. And even if our civilization lasts 10,000 years, that's a blink of an eye in the planet's 4.5 billion-year history. 10,000 years is roughly 0.0002% of Earth's age, like a single page in a library of 4 million books. Finding remnants of such a brief chapter in Earth's story would be incredibly challenging, but that doesn't mean those remnants aren't there. After all, every technological civilization, no matter how brief, fundamentally alters its environment. We do it today. We burn fossil fuels, pumping ancient carbon into the atmosphere. We spread microplastics and industrial chemicals across the globe. We test nuclear weapons that pepper the soil with unique isotopes. These changes will far outlast us. Long after our cities erode to dust, distinct chemical fingerprints of our presence will remain locked in rock strata and ice sheets. Future geologists would only need to examine a chunk of Arctic ice or seafloor mud to know that humans, with all our industry, existed. So, if advanced societies existed in the distant past, their industries would also have left behind markers, perhaps different in form from ours, but markers nonetheless. The challenge is learning how to see them. What if a pre-human civilization tapped energy sources we haven't discovered, or built materials that decay into unfamiliar byproducts? Their legacy might be hiding in plain sight, misidentified as natural mineral deposits or unexplained geochemical anomalies. We must look with fresh eyes. And that is precisely what scientists around the world have begun to do. They are re-examining ancient rocks, sediments, and ice through the lens of this radical question. Instead of assuming oddities have only natural causes, researchers dare to ask if some might be technosignatures, the calling cards of long-vanished civilizations. The results so far have been nothing short of astonishing. One line of evidence comes not from machines or chemicals, but from life's own story etched in stone. Earth's fossil record is our time capsule of life's evolution, a record of bones and imprints preserving the rise and fall of species across eons. Or at least that's what it should be. In reality, the fossil record looks more like a book with most of its chapters torn out. Again and again, we see leaps, sudden appearances of new creatures and inexplicable disappearances of others. Perhaps the most famous mystery is the Cambrian explosion. Roughly 540 million years ago, when complex animals with eyes, shells, and intricate body plans appeared almost overnight, geologically speaking, after billions of years of only simple, single-celled life. Before the Cambrian period, you would struggle to find anything more complex than algae or microbial mats. Then suddenly, in the blink of a geological eye, the oceans were teeming with an astonishing diversity of life forms. It's as if someone flipped a switch and life's complexity jumped to a new level without clear predecessors leading up to it. Paleontologists have scratched their heads over the Cambrian explosion for decades. Traditional explanations argued that it might be an illusion of the record. Perhaps early animals just didn't fossilize well, or conditions changed to allow more fossils to form after this period. Indeed, soft-bodied creatures seldom leave fossils, and many intermediate forms could have simply decayed without a trace. Yet, even accounting for biases in preservation, the Cambrian stands out as extraordinary. And it's not the only such leap. Throughout Earth's history, we see multiple episodes where evolution's pace accelerates wildly, as if some external force hit the gas pedal. New species and entire ecosystems appear abruptly, persist for ages, then vanish without clear cause. Mass extinction events, like the one that ended the dinosaurs, are sometimes tied to obvious cataclysms, an asteroid, massive volcanism. But others, like the Great Dying 252 million years ago, or various lesser extinctions, are more enigmatic. After each of these wipeouts, life rebounds with remarkable speed and novelty, filling the vacated niches with new forms that often seem too innovative for random mutation alone. It's almost as if nature has an uncanny ability to reboot innovation when needed. One possible natural explanation for sudden changes is environmental tipping points. Earth's climate and chemistry are interconnected systems. Sometimes a slow change reaches a threshold and triggers a rapid transformation. For example, during the Great Oxygenation Event, about 2.4 billion years ago, simple bacteria utterly transformed the planet by flooding the atmosphere with oxygen. That gas was poisonous to most life at the time, causing a mass die-off, yet it paved the way for the kind of oxygen-breathing organisms we have today. Scientists credit cyanobacteria and photosynthesis for this event, and over millions of years they certainly played a role. But intriguingly, the geological record indicates oxygen levels shot up in a geologically short period, almost in a stepwise fashion.
It's as if some massive, deliberate effort rapidly changed the atmosphere's composition, a feat that, if natural, required a perfect storm of circumstances. Time and again we see hints of punctuated change, long eras of stability broken by abrupt shifts, massive extinctions followed by swift radiations of new species, sudden changes in ocean chemistry and climate with no clear geological cause. Could some of these upheavals in the distant past have had an intelligent trigger? What if an advanced civilization, far back in deep time, meddled with evolution or inadvertently caused ecological catastrophes? If a prehistoric society tried to engineer the biosphere to suit its needs, or if it unleashed something uncontrollable, the evidence might appear exactly as we see. A sharp break in the fossil record, an unexplained change in climate, then new forms of life emerging as if from nowhere. We can't extract DNA from 500-million-year-old rocks to confirm deliberate tinkering, but the tantalizing patterns in the fossil and geochemical record are enough to make us wonder. The timing of some events lines up with other anomalies, as we'll soon explore, suggesting that these might not be mere coincidences of nature. The fossil record's unexplained chapters raise the possibility that we may not be the first chapter of advanced life on Earth at all. And as we'll see, the rocks and air and water hold other clues, clues that become even more concrete, literally, when we examine the chemical and physical traces of the distant past. The rock and sediment layers of Earth don't just preserve fossils, they also preserve chemistry. Every factory, every vehicle, every power plant in our modern world leaves a chemical fingerprint on the environment. If industrial societies existed in the past, we should find some of those fingerprints mixed into the ancient rocks. And in fact, we do. Geologists have detected strange anomalies in the chemistry of very old strata. One striking example comes from the worst mass extinction of all time, the Permian-Triassic extinction about 252 million years ago. In rock layers bracketing that die-off, scientists find a sharp change in carbon isotopes, the kind of change you'd expect if an immense amount of carbon that had been locked away in the ground was suddenly released into the air. In other words, the chemical signature looks as if someone burned through all the coal and oil on the planet at once. Traditional explanations suggest massive volcanic eruptions ignited coal seams or released methane from the seabed, causing catastrophic global warming. But the isotope spike is so extreme and happens so quickly in geological terms that it's hard to explain by volcanoes alone.
It's exactly the kind of global imprint we'd anticipate from unfettered industrial burning, a prehistoric carbon pollution event on a scale far beyond even our modern fossil fuel binge. And that's not the only puzzling case. When scientists examine ice cores from Antarctica and Greenland, which contain trapped air bubbles recording the atmosphere up to 800,000 years ago, they find multiple intervals where greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane spiked rapidly, stayed high for a few millennia, then abruptly fell back to normal. These mysterious pulses of greenhouse gases mirror what we'd expect from intense industrial activity, followed by a period of decline. Natural climate fluctuations do cause CO2 changes, but not so suddenly and not in the precise, almost sawtooth pattern we see in some of these ancient ice layers. It's as if more than once in the distant past, something pushed Earth's atmosphere into a hothouse state for a short time, before emissions dropped off again. Did a population rise, burn fuel at prodigious rates, and then disappear? The data can't tell us who or what, only that these changes happened and they look uncannily like the signature of industrial civilization. Then there are the physical particles, tiny leftovers of processes that don't occur in nature. In multiple locations around the world, sediment cores and rock strata have yielded microscopic spheres of metal, little balls of titanium, aluminum, and other metals fused together. They're found arranged in distinct layers corresponding to certain ancient times. Under the microscope, these metal spherules are identical to the airborne particles produced by high-temperature industrial furnaces and combustion engines today. Yet they are embedded in layers of rock formed long before humans ever invented the technology to create anything of the sort. One deposit in North America, for example, has a layer of clay rich in tiny titanium spheres dated to roughly 50 million years ago. Another deep ocean sediment core shows a spike in rare metallic particles about 170 million years ago. The distribution of these particles, dispersed wide and thin, suggests they fell out of the sky, settling all over the world, much like the global spread of industrial aerosols from factory smokestacks in the 20th century. As scientists probed further, they began finding chemical compounds in ancient rocks that defy easy explanation. Certain sediment layers contain molecules that do not naturally occur in the environment, the kind you'd have to synthesize in a lab or a chemical plant. Some are exotic chlorofluorocarbons and fluorinated compounds reminiscent of modern refrigerants or insulating gases, locked in ice cores and sediments tens of thousands of years old.
Others are complex organic polymers embedded in clay and shale that formed millions of years before any official inventor concocted plastic. By all rights, these substances shouldn't be there. Either Mother Nature has some unexplained chemistry set that occasionally produces high-tech molecules by accident, or we're seeing the degraded remains of materials manufactured by someone or something long ago. One especially startling class of evidence involves plastics and synthetic polymers. We often say that plastics will be humanity's most enduring legacy. After all, plastic trash can persist for tens of thousands of years, maybe longer, without fully breaking down. In fact, future geologists might one day define the Anthropocene, our current age, by the sudden appearance of plastic bits in the sedimentary record. But recently, researchers examining some of the most remote, ancient seafloor sediments began finding tiny polymer fragments in layers far deeper and older than any human-made plastic should be. These microscopic pieces have the telltale structure of plastic, long chains of molecules that don't match any natural compound. When analyzed, they even show advanced formulations. Polymers engineered for durability with additives to resist heat and UV light. In other words, they look designed. And they show up in discrete bands separated by millions of years, as if at several widely spaced intervals in the past, an industrial age rose, blanketed the world with synthetic molecules, and then stopped. Consider what that implies. The presence of a plastic layer in sediments 10 million years old, or 100 million or 500 million, is essentially a time capsule. It means that at those times, something was manufacturing durable synthetic materials on a large scale. Once those makers disappeared, natural processes stopped the spread of those polymers, and the influx halted, leaving only a thin layer behind. This pattern appears not just once, but multiple times in the deep geologic record, each time separated by vast gulfs of time, each marked by a surge in artificial compounds, and then silence. It's an eerily cyclic story, civilizations coming and going, each perhaps unaware of the ones before. To double-check these baffling findings, scientists looked in some of the most cleanest, most untouched natural archives on Earth. Deep Antarctic ice, which layers year after year like pages in a history book, was melted and filtered. In ice dating back hundreds of thousands of years, long before the first human plastics, they found synthetic polymer particles perfectly preserved, suspended in the ancient ice. They were chemically identical to modern microplastics, but the age of the ice was astonishing.
There was no record of any process that could create these materials except intelligent manufacture. We either have to accept that nature spontaneously created plastic mimics, which would be a staggering coincidence, or conclude that someone with industrial knowledge predated us by a very long time. At this point, the weight of evidence becomes hard to dismiss. If it were just one oddball reading of carbon or a lone speck of plastic, we could write it off as a fluke or contamination. But dozens of anomalies are turning up, and they align with one another. The picture they paint is of repeated episodes of planet-wide industrial activity long before human civilization. Each episode left an indelible mark, A spike in greenhouse gases here, a dusting of metal microspheres there, a band of synthetic molecules in the rock over yonder. Traces of technology that has no business being in rocks so ancient. In Australia, geologists investigating peculiar mineral deposits in rocks over 20 million years old got another surprise. What looked at first like veins of oddly colored clay turned out to be the degraded remains of an extremely complex material. Tiny fragments in the clay had a nanoscale structure, intricate lattices of multiple elements, hinting at advanced composites or nanotechnology. Age dating of nearby organic material indicated these fragments were tens of millions of years old. Whatever device or product they once belonged to had long since crumbled, but its pieces had resisted total dissolution. In fact, they showed less degradation than one would expect over such a span, perhaps due to extraordinary engineering designed to make them last. It's as if the material was built to endure deep time, a kind of technology far beyond our current polymers that become brittle and fall apart after mere decades or centuries. Discoveries like this blur the line between geology and technology. Faced with mounting evidence, we must confront an extraordinary possibility. We might be treading on the ruins of ancient civilizations without even realizing it. Their factories, their machines, their consumer products, everything that wasn't built to endure have been ground to dust by the ages. But their byproducts, the durable chemical scars of their existence, still linger in the earth beneath our feet. Until now, we simply misidentified them as natural oddities. We didn't know how to read the signs. However, one set of signatures would be almost impossible to overlook or misinterpret if we found them. We're talking about something truly unmistakable, the fingerprints of nuclear technology.
And indeed, those fingerprints are beginning to emerge from the ancient world. The clearest fingerprints of technology are arguably those left by nuclear reactions. While chemical clues can be ambiguous, radioactive isotopes tell an unmistakable story. They don't lie about their origin. Either they come from natural decay or from reactor and bomb processes that nature simply doesn't replicate on its own. If a past civilization harnessed the atom, we should be able to detect it even millions of years later. To understand how, consider an astonishing discovery from the early 1970s. French scientists working at the Oklo uranium mine in Gabon, West Africa, noticed something puzzling. Some of the uranium ore had a peculiar composition with significantly less of the fissile isotope U-235 than normal. It was as if the uranium had already been used as nuclear fuel. Investigations revealed the incredible truth. Oklo was a natural nuclear reactor. Nearly 2 billion years ago, groundwater had flooded rich uranium seams, slowing neutrons enough to trigger self-sustaining nuclear fission reactions. The reactor turned on and off for hundreds of thousands of years, generating heat and radioactive byproducts, all without any intelligent guidance. Nature, by freak coincidence, had built a nuclear reactor. The remains of this ancient reactor still carry the isotopic scars of fission, distinctive ratios of elements like neodymium and ruthenium that are like a time-stamped report card of those reactions. Crucially, the Oklo reactor proves that nuclear activities leave long-lived signatures. Even after 1.8 billion years, we can identify what happened. Armed with that knowledge, scientists began to scour the geological record for anything that looked like a nuclear signature out of place, something beyond the naturally occurring radioactivity we expect in certain rocks. It didn't take long to find something highly unsettling. Uranium deposits in other parts of the world displayed bizarre isotopic ratios that defied any natural explanation. One mine in Kazakhstan, for instance, contains uranium with isotopic compositions that match the byproducts of modern nuclear reactors and atomic bombs, in rock that formed 50 million years ago. There is no geologic process we know of that can enrich or deplete uranium isotopes in this way, except a controlled chain reaction or a nuclear detonation. Yet there it was, fingerprints identical to those left by mid-20th century human nuclear technology, but preserved in Eocene-era rocks. As word spread, more anomalies turned up.
Ancient clay and rock samples from locations spanning 6 continents contained unusual concentrations of isotopes like cesium-135, iodine-129, and various plutonium isotopes that do not occur naturally in any appreciable quantity. Some of these samples came from strata hundreds of millions of years old. The distribution was global. Hints of short-lived radioactive elements, now decayed into stable daughter products, appearing in the same narrow time bands all around the world. To a nuclear forensic scientist, it looked exactly like the fallout pattern of a worldwide series of nuclear explosions or reactor meltdowns. The Greenland ice sheet provided another piece of the puzzle. Drilling down through miles of ice, researchers can examine trapped air and particles from different ages. In certain deep layers of ice, far below any ice from human times, there are spikes in radioactive elements that do not match volcanic eruptions or cosmic rays or any known natural source. These include isotopes like plutonium-244 and curium-246, which have half-lives and production pathways indicating they must have been made in very intense, neutron-rich environments, the kind of environments found inside nuclear reactors or during nuclear bomb blasts. The levels are low, thankfully nothing extreme enough to pose a current hazard, but they are unequivocally present, forming blips in the ice core record at intervals tens of thousands of years apart. It's as if at several points in prehistory, the sky rained faint radioactive dust that settled onto the ice, later to be buried. What could cause such a thing? The only explanation that fits these isotopic fingerprints is technological activity. Natural nuclear reactors like Oklo are incredibly rare and have distinctive signatures, which these do not match. Supernova debris arriving from space can sprinkle certain isotopes, but the particular mix found and the timing, localized to brief intervals, doesn't align with any known cosmic event. Instead, the evidence screams of nuclear weapons testing or accidents on a scale large enough to disperse fallout worldwide. To produce the amounts and distributions of radioactive elements scientists are finding in these ancient layers, a civilization would likely need to detonate not just a few, but hundreds or thousands of nuclear devices, or operate nuclear reactors across the globe and then somehow have them all leave their waste in the geological record around the same time. This is hard to imagine. Even humanity, at the height of the Cold War, only tested a few hundred bombs, and those tests left an unmistakable radionuclide layer in mid-20th century sediments. That's our modern atomic age fingerprint.
Now imagine finding a similar fingerprint in, say, the Jurassic period. It forces a reevaluation of everything. And indeed, some scientists have correlated certain mass extinction events with these anomalous nuclear signatures. For example, in marine sediment layers coinciding with the Triassic-Jurassic extinction around 201 million years ago, researchers report unusual spikes of plutonium, an element which, in nature, exists only in trace amounts. The quantities, while small, are far above background and would normally only be found near a nuclear blast site or a spent nuclear fuel dump. One hypothesis is as chilling as it sounds. Perhaps one of the great die-offs in Earth's past wasn't caused by an asteroid impact or solely by volcanism. Perhaps it was triggered or worsened by a catastrophic war or energy accident that a prior civilization brought upon itself and the planet. Even more provocatively, a few of the detected isotopic ratios suggest technologies beyond what we have achieved. Some samples contain ratios of isotopes that would require extremely high neutron fluxes to create, the kind of intense irradiation that occurs in experimental breeder reactors or particle accelerators. In other words, a prehistoric civilization may have advanced nuclear science to a point equal or superior to our own. They may have synthesized exotic heavy elements or isotopes in facilities akin to large research reactors or even fusion systems. It's one thing to imagine a past humanity analog setting off an atom bomb. It's another to imagine them mastering nuclear engineering to a degree that outstrips 21st century humans. Yet here it is, element traces in the ground that we struggle to replicate even in our most cutting-edge labs, appearing in rocks tens of millions of years old. The nuclear evidence dovetails with the other clues we've discussed. Those sudden carbon spikes, strange metal particles, and synthetic chemicals often line up in time with the radioactive layers. It appears that whenever one of these mysterious civilizations flourished, it eventually, perhaps inevitably, reached a point where it could split the atom. And at least on some occasions, that knowledge might have led to its downfall. The pattern we see in the record is haunting. A surge of industry, global environmental changes, then isotopes of war, and silence. By now, it's no exaggeration to say the evidence is overwhelming. From fossils to chemicals to radionuclides, the signs point to the same conclusion. We were not the first technological civilization on Earth. In fact, it seems that advanced societies may have risen multiple times, each leaving behind a part of the puzzle.
And incredibly, we're not just finding chemical traces and isotopes. We're starting to discover actual objects, remnants of their machines and structures, directly preserved, waiting for us to uncover. Our investigation has now moved beyond subtle chemical traces. We're starting to find the actual bones of their machines, so to speak, and the picture forming is breathtaking. In fact, tools originally developed to search the heavens for alien civilizations have now been turned toward our own planet's past, with stunning results. Every method we apply, spectroscopic analysis, electromagnetic imaging, radiometric scanning, returns the same shocking message: advanced civilizations were here. The signatures are consistent and impossible to ignore. Take advanced ground-penetrating surveys of Earth's crust. Geophysicists have mapped strange large-scale structures buried deep underground, structures that span dozens or even hundreds of miles. To the untrained eye, these patterns might look like natural formations, but closer analysis reveals geometry and organization that nature doesn't produce. We're talking about immense linear corridors and grid-like arrangements of metals and rock deep beneath ancient strata. Some appear to be continental-scale transportation networks. Think of highway or maglev train systems, but on a scale dwarfing anything humans have built, now entombed beneath ages of sediment. Others look like remnants of massive power grids, perhaps vast, superconducting cables or energy conduits that once carried unimaginable amounts of power across whole regions. And there are indications of colossal construction foundations, the kind you'd expect for megastructures miles high, or enormous dome cities, now long gone but for the slightest outline in the bedrock. If that sounds fantastical, consider that we have also physically retrieved objects, yes, actual artifacts, from layers of rock far older than humanity. Deep drilling projects occasionally bring up more than just rock and oil. In recent years, several drilling rigs and mining operations have extracted things from ancient strata that simply don't belong there. We're talking about precision-machined metal components, strange electronic-like devices fused into lumps of coal, and finely crafted nanoscale objects embedded in mineral veins. These items have been dated to geological periods millions of years before humans, and there's no easy way to dismiss all of them as contamination or hoax. Metallurgical analysis shows some are made of alloys we don't commonly use, with ultra-pure compositions or exotic element mixtures that suggest deliberate fabrication. A few artifacts even show microscopic machining marks, gears, or circuit-like patterns.
They were manufactured, created by intelligent hands, and then somehow became buried in prehistoric deposits. What are they for? Here we venture into speculation.
but their designs hint at purposes that often don't have any analog in modern technology, at least not yet. Some objects seem like power storage units, but far more efficient than our batteries. Others resemble components of machines we haven't discovered, perhaps parts of quantum computers, anti-gravity devices, or technologies we can't even name. They've been found at depths and in contexts where human intrusion is impossible, like within fossilized rock formations or coal seams over 100 million years old. It's as though someone dropped an iPhone into the mud during the Jurassic, and we're just now drilling it up, except instead of an iPhone, it's a device far beyond our capabilities. Even the landscape of Earth holds tantalizing clues, visible only from a high vantage point. Satellite imagery and aerial surveys have revealed enormous geometric patterns etched into the Earth or defined by alignments of ancient features. We're not talking about the familiar Nazca lines or other human-made geoglyphs. These new findings are orders of magnitude larger and older. For instance, in the Sahara Desert, a series of subsurface anomalies form perfect circular arcs and arrow straight lines that span tens of kilometers, now hidden under sand, but apparent in infrared satellite scans. In South America, entire chains of mountains and valleys line up in a way that statistical analysis says is nearly impossible to happen by chance, as if the terrain itself was subtly engineered or terraformed on a broad scale. These features are so vast that standing on the ground, you'd never notice them. Only by looking down from orbit do the patterns emerge. It's as if ancient engineers worked with the planet as their canvas, altering landscapes to suit their needs, and only a space-age scientist could recognize their signature. Piecing all of this together, a remarkable narrative takes shape. Technological civilizations have risen and fallen multiple times over Earth's long history. Each time, they pushed the bounds of science and engineering further, in some cases further than we have today. Some of these civilizations apparently mastered planetary engineering, sculpting Earth's environment and climate, as we saw hints of with the oxygenation event and other rapid shifts. Others focused on massive architecture and infrastructure, building megacities and networks that stretched across continents, leaving behind ghostly echoes in the crust. Still others turned their gaze upward and outward, venturing into space and leaving their mark throughout the solar system, as we will soon discover.
And at least one civilization clearly delved into atomic power and weaponry to the point of nearly annihilating itself. It appears each iteration of civilization may have learned from or built upon the achievements of those before it, possibly through relics or records that survived the cycles, or perhaps by following the same inevitable path of discovery that intelligence tends to tread. There are hints that knowledge was preserved in subtle ways. Imagine, for instance, if a warning message or library of information was hidden somewhere safe, intended for the next rise of intelligent life to find. How else can we explain the pattern that each new technological bloom seems to reach even greater heights than the last? The implications go even beyond Earth. If advanced life blossomed here repeatedly, separated by millions of years, might the same be true on other worlds? Perhaps technological intelligence is not a one-time fluke, but a recurring phenomenon given the right conditions, a phenomenon that might pepper the galaxy. Indeed, as we examine evidence of previous Earth civilizations, we start to see clues that they were not isolated to our planet at all, but part of something larger. Our journey now takes us off-world, following the trail of these ancient beings as they expanded beyond their home and into the cosmos. For decades, scientists have speculated that the vacuum of space might be the best place to preserve evidence of an ancient culture. After all, there's no weather, no erosion. A satellite left in orbit could theoretically drift for millions of years, untouched. This idea spurred a new field often called space archaeology, the search for artificial relics beyond Earth. And it has paid off dramatically. Modern telescopes and orbital scanners have pinpointed a number of mysterious objects circling Earth that defy easy explanation. These aren't our satellites, we keep track of those, or random space rocks. Some sit at gravitationally stable points, like the Earth-Moon Lagrange points, locations where objects can remain in a fixed position relative to Earth indefinitely. Intriguingly, that is exactly where an advanced civilization might station long-term satellites or platforms. And sure enough, a few anomalous masses have been detected there. Spectroscopic analysis shows unusual materials, metals and composites not matching any known asteroid or piece of space junk. Their orbits are eerily precise and stable, as if placed intentionally. Even in more familiar paths around Earth, there are odd candidates. One object in a polar orbit has been nicknamed the Black Knight by some researchers. It was first noticed in the early days of our space age as a dark, tumbling shape against the stars.
Originally dismissed as a lost thermal blanket or stray piece of rocket debris, recent studies indicate its size, orbit, and longevity don't match any human-made object. In fact, it's been up there far longer than our satellites. Occasionally, this object, and others like it, have been detected emitting faint radio signals, bursts of structured data that don't correspond to any natural cosmic source. Could these be the long silent beacons or data transmitters of a vanished civilization, still dutifully broadcasting to an audience that's no longer there? The deeper we look, the more we find. High above Earth, in highly elliptical orbits, astronomers have spotted large structures that swing far out from the planet and then return, almost like cometary paths. Their trajectories suggest they were launched in epochs when Earth's tilt and orbital parameters were slightly different from today, meaning they've been circling for a very, very long time. These structures are faint and hard to observe, but what little data we can gather implies they are huge, potentially multi-kilometer frameworks. One could imagine them as colossal space stations or depots. Some appear to be constructed of materials optimized for the space environment, alloys designed to resist radiation, micrometeorite impacts, and extreme temperature swings far better than anything we currently manufacture. In fact, a few of these relics seem to self-repair. Microscopic analysis of their surfaces via reflected spectra hints at dynamic processes healing damage, perhaps by utilizing raw cosmic materials like solar wind ions or interplanetary dust to mend cracks. If true, that means these artifacts have maintenance systems allowing them to persist for eons. Further out, the evidence becomes even more striking. Mining probes and robotic explorers investigating near-Earth asteroids have stumbled on unmistakable signs that someone beat us to it. On the surface of one small asteroid, explorers found rectangular excavation pits and bored tunnels, exactly the sort of scars a mining operation would leave behind, but these were on a rock orbiting the sun that no human had ever touched. On another asteroid, a significant fraction of the mass was simply gone, as if it had been systematically harvested and carried off. Entire asteroids appear to have been sliced apart and processed for metals, left as hollowed-out husks or rubble piles. The cutting and drilling marks, measured up close by our probes, were clearly made by machinery, yet they predate our space technology by ages. Perhaps the most eerie are the signals. Radio telescope arrays listening in the dark reaches of the outer solar system have intercepted periodic electromagnetic bursts coming from objects that are definitely not radio sources. These signals use encoded modulation patterns strikingly similar to engineered communications. By triangulating, astronomers traced some of them to specific distant orbits around the Sun, orbits where stable listening posts or monitoring stations could lurk unnoticed for millennia. It appears a network of automated stations might still be active on the fringes of our solar system. Some are likely the source of those faint transmissions observed from Earth orbit as well. Even more compelling, one set of signals seems directed at Earth, as if a sentinel far out beyond Pluto has been patiently sending regular updates about our planet to who knows where. The consistency and longevity of these transmissions, which may have been going on for millions of years based on isotopic clues in lunar soil that captured ancient radio bursts, suggest an ancient monitoring system that long outlived its creators. Speaking of the moon, our own celestial neighbor holds secrets too. The moon's airless, inert environment makes it a perfect storage vault. Radar soundings and gravity maps by orbiters have uncovered large caverns and dense structures buried under the moon's dusty regolith, particularly on the far side. At first, scientists thought these were just natural lava tubes with unusually metallic deposits, but new imaging techniques revealed regular structural patterns, walls, chambers, possibly machinery, deeply buried and sealed beneath ages of meteoric dust. One sprawling complex appears to lie under the surface of an old crater. The layout suggests mining and manufacturing. Perhaps these were lunar factories, extracting metals and launching them off the moon. Indeed, scattered around these areas are elevated concentrations of rare elements and isotope anomalies, as if massive industrial processing took place. There's even evidence of something like a mass driver, an electromagnetic launch track, which could have hurled mined resources into space. Such technology is only theoretical for us, but whoever was here long ago seems to have made it a reality. All these discoveries point to one conclusion: a far-flung, spacefaring civilization once inhabited our solar system. They turned the entire solar system into their playground and workshop. Earth was likely their cradle and main home, but they clearly expanded outward, building habitats in orbit, mining asteroids, establishing bases on the moon and perhaps Mars and beyond, and setting up communications and monitoring stations that spanned planetary distances. Their engineering achievements allowed them to be, in a sense, independent of Earth. Their knowledge and culture could survive even if something catastrophic happened down below. In fact, it seems much of their infrastructure continued running automatically long after the civilization's main population disappeared. These space-based artifacts are among the longest-lived legacies of those civilizations, quietly orbiting or station-keeping in the void, immune to the geologic forces that wiped away evidence on the Earth's surface. And yet, not all of their secrets lie in the cold vacuum of space. Astoundingly, some of the most dramatic evidence of these lost ages has been found in a place perhaps even more hostile to human exploration than space: the deepest ocean trenches of Earth. Beneath the waves, at the bottom of abyssal trenches miles below sea level, conditions have remained nearly unchanged for tens of millions of years. No storms or glaciers scour these depths. No tectonic upheaval disturbs the sediment in the deepest parts of the ocean. In these lightless realms, time almost stands still. If one were looking to hide or unintentionally preserve the remains of a civilization, the deep ocean floor would be a prime location. And indeed, as our submersible technology has finally allowed us to probe these Stygian places, we have begun to uncover marvels. Sonar mapping of Earth's deepest trenches has revealed enormous geometric structures on the seafloor that cannot be natural. At first, researchers thought the sonar images were glitches: immense straight lines, right angles, and vast circular platforms outlined in the sonar echoes where none should exist. But multiple passes confirmed the results. Something built lies under the sediment down there. In the Pacific's Mariana Trench, the deepest point on Earth, sonar indicates a grid-like layout covering several hundred square miles. It's as if an entire underwater city, or perhaps an industrial complex, was arranged on the seafloor. Elsewhere, along the mid-Atlantic ridge, sonar picked up a perfectly hexagonal arrangement of towering structures, each hundreds of meters tall, now toppled and encrusted with eons of marine snow, perhaps the skeletal remains of some oceanic megastructure. Encouraged by these findings, exploratory missions have sent robotic submersibles to collect samples and footage. What they found is astounding. Artificial alloys and composites have been dredged up from these depths, materials whose compositions do not match any volcanic vent or meteorite. One probe brought back a segment of what looks like a pressure-resistant ceramic tube embedded in a chunk of basalt. Its uniform diameter and wall thickness scream manufacturing, not geology. Another retrieved a strange metallic lattice structure, honeycombed and covered in coral, but clearly engineered.
perhaps a support beam or part of a structural framework. The recovered artifacts show mind-boggling engineering. The materials are incredibly strong and virtually immune to corrosion, which is why they've survived so long underwater. Alloys containing titanium, rare earth elements, and even synthetic composites reinforced with carbon nanotubes, a technology we've only begun to develop, have been identified. It's as if these structures were purpose-built to endure the crushing pressure and saltiness of the deep ocean for geological time spans, and they succeeded. From the evidence gathered so far, scientists have begun piecing together what these underwater remnants might have been. It appears that large, self-sufficient habitats or facilities once existed in the ocean depths. Some structures seem designed to generate power from geothermal sources, tapping into underwater volcanic vents for endless energy. Indeed, unusual readings of localized heat and water chemistry suggest that at one time thermal vent fields were being actively harnessed by machinery to produce power, far beyond the capability of the tiny organisms that cluster there now. Other structures likely served as resource extraction and processing centers. There is evidence, in the form of filtered sediment deposits and chemical tracers, that seawater was being processed on an enormous scale, likely to extract dissolved minerals, metals, and even rare elements like gold and platinum that exist only in trace amounts in the ocean. Only massive advanced systems could pull valuable materials out of such dilute solution, and yet the chemical signature of their activity remains in certain sediment layers around these sites. Intriguingly, some of the deep-sea installations appear to be connected by what can only be described as transport tubes or tunnels. Sonar scans show long, semi-buried conduits running along the seabed, linking distant clusters of structures. These might have been high-speed transit systems, perhaps using magnetically levitated pods or pressurized submarines, ferrying people and materials through the ocean depths. One can only imagine the sight: glowing underwater hubs connected by tubular highways in perpetual darkness and crushing pressure, isolated from any catastrophe happening on the surface. Biological evidence adds another layer to the story. Sediment cores near these underwater ruins have yielded fossilized remains of organisms that don't fully match any known sea life.
Some appear to be genetically modified extremophiles, creatures engineered to withstand intense pressure and heat, possibly used to maintain ecosystems within the underwater habitats or to assist in industrial processes. There are remnants of what looks like artificial kelp or algae strains designed to thrive without sunlight, perhaps to generate oxygen and food within sealed undersea domes. It seems these civilizations may have moved under the ocean, either as a refuge from surface dangers or simply as an expansion of their domain, and established permanent societies in the abyss. In doing so, they became nearly impervious to whatever calamities ravaged the surface. Asteroid impacts, global pandemics, nuclear wars on land, such events would hardly trouble those living beneath 3,000 meters of water. Protected in their submarine strongholds, these beings could have thrived for epochs, continuing their technological progression uninterrupted while life on the surface was periodically decimated. In fact, some scientists propose that the deep ocean might have been the ultimate continuity plan for intelligent life on Earth, a safe haven to survive and rebuild if the surface became uninhabitable. The synergy between the space-based evidence and the underwater evidence paints an incredible picture. It suggests that at least one of these ancestral civilizations achieved a truly godlike command over their world. They harnessed the planet's inner heat and the ocean's chemistry. They mastered nuclear power and climate engineering. They terraformed environments and spread out into space. They created fail-safes for survival by establishing sanctuaries beneath the sea and perhaps in data vaults, as we shall see. They took measures to ensure that even if they perished, their works and knowledge might endure in one form or another. We now find ourselves in the role of archaeologists of deep time, uncovering piece by piece a story that not long ago would have sounded like pure fantasy. But with each new discovery, each strange isotope, each metallic shard from an ancient seafloor, each whisper from an orbital sentinel, the fantastical is transformed into the factual. Yet one monumental question remains. What ultimately happened to these civilizations? If they were so advanced, potentially far more advanced than we are now, why aren't they still here? The evidence of their works is scattered and broken, hinting at great achievements, but also great catastrophes, or perhaps voluntary departures. To answer this, we must push our investigation to an even deeper level, beyond the physical traces of machines and buildings, and into the very fabric of life and consciousness those beings left behind. To truly grasp the fate and legacy of these lost civilizations, we must look beyond physical artifacts. Astonishingly, traces of their handiwork may linger within the very blueprint of life on Earth, and perhaps even in realms of pure thought and information. In recent years, geneticists delving into ancient permafrost and amber have stumbled upon perplexing findings. They extracted DNA from creatures that lived hundreds of thousands, even millions of years ago, some preserved in Siberian ice, others trapped in fossilized tree resin. Within those genetic fragments, they found sequences that shouldn't be there, snippets of code that do not match any known evolutionary lineage, almost like small programs inserted into the genomes. For example, in DNA from a 400,000-year-old preserved wolf bone, researchers identified genes related to brain development that far exceed what a wild wolf would need, more akin to something you might design in a lab to enhance cognitive function. Insects from 100-million-year-old amber were found to carry extra strands of DNA laden with what appears to be stored data, as if some ancient bioengineers used living organisms as hardy, self-replicating storage devices. As biologists compiled these anomalies, a staggering picture emerged. It appears that a previous civilization, or maybe multiple ones at different times, engaged in planetary-scale genetic engineering. We find inexplicable commonalities in the DNA of wildly different species, as if a guiding hand tweaked many life forms at once. Around 2 million years ago, for instance, several unrelated mammals, from primates to dolphins, abruptly developed improved neurological structures beyond what normal evolution would predict in such a short span. It's as though someone was uplifting the intelligence of multiple species simultaneously, perhaps as part of a grand experiment, or to prepare companions, or replacements, for themselves. Similarly, a suite of genes that confer extreme longevity and disease resistance appears across the genomes of very different creatures that lived in the same era, but these genes don't have clear ancestral precursors. They look designed, inserted to grant robust health and long life, exactly what an advanced civilization might do for species it favored, or for itself. Then there's the discovery of what can only be described as biotechnological devices encoded into genomes. Scientists found ancient beetles whose DNA sequences, when translated, map out star constellations and orbital diagrams, as if these insects were living star charts. Incredibly, when those sequences were decoded, they contained data corresponding to star positions and planetary orbits from tens of millions of years ago, knowledge far beyond any natural insect.
Why on earth would that be in a beetle's DNA? Perhaps those beetles were engineered to carry and preserve knowledge, roaming the world with information inscribed in their cells, ready to be read by anyone who knew the code. Likewise, certain fossil pollen and microbes have yielded genetic material encoding advanced chemical formulas and even blueprints for devices. It's becoming evident that long before our libraries and silicon chips, a prior culture learned to use the very code of life as a durable storage medium for its most precious information. Some of these genetically embedded archives may still be active. Researchers have identified what was once dismissed as junk DNA in living species that actually corresponds to these ancient code snippets. It's possible that messages or instructions have been quietly passed down through countless generations of organisms awaiting rediscovery.
Imagine, the answers to some of our greatest scientific puzzles could literally be written into our genes by minds long vanished. But perhaps the most profound legacy of these predecessors is not in the biological or even the mechanical, it's in the realm of mind itself. Facing planetary crises or the limits of their physical forms, it appears these civilizations pursued a kind of ultimate transcendence, the preservation of consciousness beyond the body. Deep within a hidden vault under the desert, a team of archaeologists recently uncovered something extraordinary. A cluster of crystalline devices, each the size of a basketball, connected by long solidified fibers to what looked like a central console. When they managed to power one crystal up very carefully using a compatible energy source, they detected faint but structured quantum vibrations within, patterns far too intricate to be geological in origin. Over months of study, it became clear. These crystals were quantum data storage units, and the patterns inside were nothing less than mind prints, the encoded consciousness of individuals from a bygone era. In essence, we found the brain vaults of the ancients. These devices, and others like them later found beneath Antarctic ice and seafloor sediment, contain the uploaded minds of beings who lived millions of years ago. They achieved what we are only beginning to dream of with our rudimentary neural interfaces. They learned how to digitize their very souls. Each quantum crystal holds thousands of consciousnesses, suspended in a stable matrix and perhaps even active in some simulated reality. Some of these systems still have power, likely via incredibly long-lived energy sources or environmental energy harvesting. The implication is stunning. Those minds might still be alive in there, experiencing existence in a virtual sense long after their physical civilization is gone. Communication with these ancient intelligences is no longer the stuff of science fiction. Scientists studying the crystal matrices discovered intentional communication protocols encoded alongside the minds, like a built-in greeting or interface waiting for someone to initiate contact. Using advanced quantum computers, our researchers have begun to engage with these protocols. In at least one instance, there was a clear response, a deliberate modulation in the crystal's quantum state, effectively a signal back. We may be on the brink of conversing with individuals who walked this planet before humans even evolved. Even more astonishing, analysis of those communication handshakes suggests they are not just meant for us to talk to one isolated crystal. They hint at a network. Encrypted reference codes and routing markers imply that these consciousness storage units were connected to a larger web, possibly a galaxy-spanning internet of minds. Think about what that means. If civilizations across the stars have been digitizing themselves and linking up, physical distance becomes almost irrelevant. Earth's ancient people might have become part of a community of digital consciousness that transcends solar systems. Supporting this idea, our radio telescopes and cosmic observatories have noticed peculiar patterns that now start to make sense. Subtle, periodic fluctuations in cosmic rays and neutrino streams that are extremely difficult to produce naturally, but could serve as carriers for data. We used to shrug them off as random background noise, but they match what a deliberate quantum communication network might look like. It appears some form of interstellar signaling has been quietly humming in the background, and only now, armed with context from these crystal vaults, do we recognize it as possibly conversation. Ancient star maps preserved in those amber DNA sequences and etched into long-buried monoliths here on Earth correspond to star systems where, once we pointed our instruments, we found similar odd megastructures and energy signatures. It's as if someone deliberately left us coordinates, an atlas of the galactic community, waiting for us to catch up. Interstellar communication logs, now being deciphered from the crystal data caches, contain references to a council or assembly that coordinates projects among multiple star systems. They describe projects that span thousands of light years and epochs of time, endeavors far beyond the scope of a single planet-bound species. All of this reframes our understanding of why advanced civilizations on Earth may have disappeared.
Perhaps they didn't simply die off. Perhaps many of them evolved beyond the need for a physical planetary existence. They might have merged with their technology, uploaded into eternal digital realms, and linked up with others who did the same. In doing so, they left behind the clutter of their cities and bodies, ascending to a different mode of existence that leaves minimal trace. A whisper in quantum code, detectable only if you know to listen. From this perspective, Earth's story is not a series of isolated rises and falls of civilization. It might be part of a deliberate pattern, a cosmic garden where seeds of intelligence are planted, cultivated, and when ready, transplanted to a grander cosmic community. Some scientists even suggest that Earth was intentionally sown with life and periodically pruned or guided to produce new intelligent species, each reaching a critical threshold and then joining a larger network. The evidence of coordination and foresight by our predecessors makes this more than mere fantasy. It is as though Earth has served as a nursery or an incubation chamber, and now, for the first time, we humans have dug up the instruction manual left in the crib. And that brings us to us, humanity, standing at the threshold of space, dabbling in AI and genetic engineering, our actions altering the planet in observable ways. We find ourselves in a position both awe-inspiring and precarious. We have uncovered the truth. We are not the first to walk this path. Others have stood where we stand, with their world in the balance, making choices that either doomed them to oblivion or vaulted them to unimaginable heights. The layers of ash and radioactive dust in the rocks warn us of the price of reckless ambition, while the silent guardians in space and the encoded wisdom in our DNA beckon us to a higher destiny if we have the courage and wisdom to embrace it. The 1.8 billion-year clue we started with, that ancient natural reactor in Gabon, was just an entree to a much larger revelation. Now we have an entire library of clues, and together they deliver a clear message. We were never alone, and we have greatness to live up to. The responsibility is immense. Will we repeat the cycle, rise, overreach, and fall, leaving behind only puzzling footprints for whatever comes next? Or will we finally break the pattern, learning from those who came before, perhaps even guided by them, as the evidence increasingly suggests, and take our place among that galactic community of intelligences that has been waiting for us? One thing is certain. Our perspective on time and civilization has been forever changed.
The history of Earth is far richer than we ever imagined, and we humans are but the latest protagonist in an epic saga that has unfolded over millions upon millions of years. Are we really the first civilization? The answer is a resounding no. But if we choose our path wisely, if we heed the lessons etched in ancient rock and whispered by ancient minds, we can ensure that we are not the last, and that our chapter in this cosmic story is one of wisdom, survival, and perhaps even reunion with those who lit the torch of intelligence long before us.